Hello, I'm Shauna and welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about my makeup spending habits so far this year. And in total, up until this point in time in the making of this video, I have spent less than $100 on makeup. Now, in terms of makeup spending and the history of my channel, this has been the least amount of money I have ever spent on makeup. We're getting close to year 3 of my channel. So in the almost 3 years I've been on YouTube, this has been the best makeup spending year I've had so far. My makeup spending this year has felt more effortless than in the past, although I don't want to say that it is actually without effort. I think it's just been a little bit easier. And because my makeup spending is so different, I really had to ask myself, well, what specifically is so different this year? And just in terms of monetary value, when I'm thinking about my makeup spending this year and in the last 2 years, I think I spent $100 on makeup in the very first month of last year alone. And when I look at my no-buy year, I definitely spent more than that on makeup in that year when I had more makeup than at that time than I do now. And I was also on a no-buy. That year, I still am trying to figure out the mystery of the Patrick Ta blushes. How did those come into my collection? Those are about $40 each. And I don't really mention them anywhere on the channel. And I don't think I got them as a gift, so I don't really know how that happened. Anyways, something really different has happened this year, and I want to talk about that. So very, very briefly, I'll talk about what I've purchased and then what's on my radar for the rest of the year as we wrap up, because I don't actually think we'll have any kind of talk about like makeup spending or what I've purchased until the very end of the year if we do something like that. Like it'll be more of like a year-long reflection, and then we'll talk about what makes this year so different than in the years previous. So far this year, I've purchased 9 things. One of them was free, and one of them isn't really a makeup item, but it's makeup adjacent. So let me share everything very briefly. First thing I have is my CoverGirl setting powder. This was about $7. We're almost done with her. Like we're really getting through the pan. And so I do think that a replacement powder is on the horizon very soon. I've purchased 2 mascaras. The first is this one. I purchased this in June, I believe, if not early July. And then most recently, like in the past week, I think this was last week, I got this one. This is the CoverGirl Lash Blast Volume. I'm looking for a more volumizing mascara, so we have this one. I also purchased a handful of things from NYX. So the powder was $7, and then the 2 mascaras together were $18. And then the next thing I got are some NYX products. I placed one order. So I got the Marshmallow Primer. This was $12. I also got the Thick It Stick It Brow Gel. That was $11. And then I got the Born to Glow Foundation. This was $12. And then I got the High Glass Primer. I got all of this stuff when there was a 30% discount, and then I also got another discount on top of that. So the whole order, I think, was roughly $33 with tax for 4 things, which was incredible. The last purchases I made were from a MAC sale, and these were already things I had on my radar. So the first was the Fix It Setting Spray, which was $28.50 and the most expensive thing I purchased this year. And then I also got an empty palette. So I didn't buy the shades. I just got this palette. And then this was $11. So far, my total makeup spending is $99.50. Just about everything is drugstore except for these 2 things, which is a little bit unusual for my spending. I am somewhat surprised that there isn't more high-end makeup when I'm just thinking about things that could be replaced would be things like bronzers, primers, foundations, eyebrow gels, mascaras, setting sprays, eyeliner. I tend to go drugstore for those things, although not always exclusively. So what's on my radar for the rest of the year? I am most likely going to be purchasing another pressed powder. I have a couple on my mind that I'm looking at. All of them are drugstore. One of them is a different CoverGirl powder. And then the other one is that L'Oreal, I think it's their Freshwear powder. Those are two on my radar for the next one. And it's very likely I'll buy one in November. The other thing I'm looking at is a foundation. And I'm most likely going to be finishing 2 foundations before the end of the year. And whenever those go, I'll then buy a replacement because I'll only have one kind of full coverage liquid product left, which is this guy, the Born to Glow. But I think I kind of messed up in buying because it's a little bit, right now, I guess like it works, smidge on the dark side, but in order to wear this in the upcoming winter months, it's going to be too dark pretty quickly. Actually, that works really well. I think maybe on camera, it's maybe picking up like it's looking less skin tone than it is in real life. In real life, I can't even see it on my hand. Anyways, that's going to be too dark for me very quickly, and I'll at least need something to mix in with it or get another shade of that something. So I will very likely need another foundation before the end of the year, probably within the next 6 weeks. The last thing I'm interested in getting is an eyebrow pencil. I have some sparseness in the tail of my brow that I would like to fill in. This product isn't quite doing the trick. I don't love this as much as I hoped. In my opinion, Boy Brow is still the best eyebrow gel out there. Whenever I finish this, I'll buy the Boy Brow as a replacement. I think that it just hits so hard. And when I've been rewatching videos from last year, and my eyebrows just look amazing. This just doesn't quite do the trick. And so I think I'm noticing the sparseness more than when I had the Boy Brow. Anyways, I want to fill them in a little bit more. So that is likely to be what I'll be buying for the rest of the year. Despite some of the purchases so far this year not being necessities, like did I need a glowing setting spray when I already have one? No, but I also have just 2 setting sprays. Did I need a new primer when I had other ones? No, but I still love this. I got 2 mascaras, a powder, and an eyebrow gel. Those were direct 1-for-1 replacements. This one, again, was more of my interest in trying something, but I have very few foundations left. So it's not as though my 4 fun purchases are really fun, like buying a new lipstick for fall or a new eyeshadow palette or something like that. So even my 4 fun purchases are more practical than they've ever really been. And when I'm thinking about the rest of the year, we basically are just about to enter that like Black Friday holiday season. I know we're still some time away, but in my mind, when there's the Sephora sale, it's kind of like the entrance of that season, even if I don't really shop this. That sale is coming up in roughly a week, and then come the start of November, that is when you start seeing the holiday sales and the ads and those kinds of things. And then it kind of feels like a holiday shopping mentality starting roughly around the beginning of November. Just based on how the year has gone, I've done really well with my spending. I'm just really proud of it. The only question mark for the rest of the year is that Black Friday period. And I personally feel like once there's the Sephora sale, it kind of kicks off that period. And the Sephora sale is happening earlier this year than in the past couple years. The Sephora sale usually happens in November, and it's happening in October this year. Either way, when it comes to the beginning of November, that is, in my mind, kind of the start of the holiday season. The holiday ads, the shopping ads, the sales, like everything kind of ramps up more come November. And that is the time I feel most susceptible to falling off the rails, if you will. I did that last year, fell off the rails last year. I did not do well with the holiday time last year, which had a lot to do with like my family situation. I feel like I will not shop the sales or any of that because I'm feeling great right now. Like I'm doing such a great job keeping my head, I guess, and keeping very rational and reasonable. But also, I've just felt so content with my stuff that it's not really easy to tempt me. So last holiday season, I did give myself the choice of creating like a self-selected gift, and I gave myself a budget. I don't actually think I'm going to do that this year. That was one of the things that was like up in the air for me. Like, I didn't do well with the holiday sales last year. And so I was like, do I start this self-selected gift? Like, do I make that part of the season? I want to say no. Like, I really do. In that sense, time will tell if that is what actually happens. But I would like to say no to the self-selected gift. I would like to say no to all of the sales. There's no real makeup that I want or need except those replacements. So I think that is what the next 2 months is going to look like, or so I hope. But we'll see. If I change my mind and I decide we'll do self-selected gift, I'm sure I'll notify you in some kind of way. Let's talk about what is different this year. I think the amount that I've spent and the quantity of stuff just says something in and of itself. But when I think about how the last year has gone, there are definite things that I can pinpoint that I am doing differently and that are different. I want to talk about them. And there's 4 things that I really want to talk about. And I think ultimately what I've noticed is that my shopping habits and makeup shopping habits are a true testament to the effectiveness of the year of contentment. I'm not trying to say that my shopping habits have been perfect or this is the perfect year, but what I am saying is that my focus on contentment is resulting in change. I'm seeing changes in my mindset and my habits, and that there is a noticeable difference. If you take away anything from the video, this is the thing to take away. My interest has really shifted. So I'm interested now in being content instead of buying less. And this was the exact way I phrased the project at the very beginning of the year. And I did actually have a hard time shifting that mindset because I was still really obsessed with stuff and counting in spreadsheets at the beginning of the year. I think it took me at least 4 months, if not 5, in order to really make that shift mentally. You can really see my emphasis on stuff and counting things and like trying to live with the least amount of things as possible. And, the buy less at the very beginning of the year, that was what my contentment year updates were until I think about April or May. And although I said at the beginning of the year, I wanted my focus to be on contentment instead of stuff, I found that really hard to implement in reality because I think just the way that we think about no buys and minimalism really revolve around this practice of not buying stuff and having that be the mentality. And I had that as well. And that was just really hard to shed. I was tracking everything and overanalyzing everything from a $3 whisk that I got at Walmart to the couple $100 I spent on appliances when I moved into this place. It was really bad mentally, and I found myself thinking about stuff all the time. It was occupying a lot of time and brain space and worry. It was just a really bad place to be in. It just wasn't like what I wanted the project to be and what was happening. Those 2 things weren't aligned. What I am not saying is that we shouldn't track anything, period, or that we shouldn't consider how we purchase or spend our money. And there's a difference between being aware of how you spend your money and obsessing over it. Not tracking stuff wasn't the only change, and that only goes so far. That did help in, creating some peace in my mind. But in terms of changing my perspective and, garnering results, the thing that really did it was making the focus of just about every day on being as content as I could in most areas in my life. So I was actually asking myself, how can I be content with, fill in the blank? How can I be content with my makeup? How can I be content with my wardrobe, with my reading life, with my exercise, with my eating habits, etc., etc.? And the question there isn't how can it be the best, or it isn't how can I be the healthiest, or even how can I be the best version of myself. I think that is a separate question. It's simply how can I be content with this area of my life? And every time I asked, I made that thing a focus and leaned really heavily into that part of my life. And some things, I really made them part of my personality for a while. I was super into art journaling between like April and June. You saw content like that. I got big into reading between May and July, or I think May and July. I have maintained it, and I've actually surpassed my reading goals for this year. Like, I've had the best reading year ever, which is really funny because the first like 3 or 4 months of the year, we'll say the first 3 months of the year were super slow. Like, I read maybe 10 books across 3 months, when there have been months where I have read that amount alone. And there was also so much DNFing happening in the first 3 months of the year. And even the books that I did read in the first 3 months of the year, I didn't really love any of it. And so I really began with brainstorming what contentment would mean to me, like what that would look and feel like in my life generally. And then, I really shifted into thinking about the different segments of my life. And I shifted my focus and how I operate day to day to thinking about that question. And when you look for ways to be content, you will find them. You absolutely will. And part of, shifting my overall contentment day to day was some gratitude. What I really found is that I was not focusing on contentment or gratitude overall in my life. And so it was always, what's the next thing? And always looking to the next thing, even when I'm reading, what's the next book? Or, looking to buy the next thing or the next new food item or the next new this or that, even if it wasn't makeup. And so I was out of practice with appreciating what I have and learning to do that across my life. And so what I found helpful was focusing on little sections of my life. With makeup, how do I be content with what I have here? That can translate to other sections. Like if you want to, make an everyday makeup bag, you can do that with other things. Like you can create a mini capsule, or you can create a mini skincare bag, or you can create, like there's so many lessons that we can learn in one place and implement them into other spaces, and that can help us be more creative. But ultimately, if you're out of practice being content, it can feel overwhelming to just say, well, how can I be content with my life? When we haven't spent our lives trying to create contentment or thinking in that way. And so there's also potential to be really unhappy with the way that our lives are so far right now. And I think there was some of that for me where I just felt like shit, because it was like, well, nothing really feels content. And at some points I was framing it as the best. Like my let's say my wardrobe isn't the best. Well, you know what? That's not the question that I asked. And I was conflating the best with contentment. And contentment doesn't ask us to be the best or to have the best things. Contentment asks us to be happy with what we have and enjoy what we have and live our lives for who we are. And here's the kind of like the secret sauce for this. I guess I'll just speak for myself. The desire for other things has really just gone down the toilet. That was not a great analogy, but it's not the same as it was, because I really love what I have so much that I'm rarely enticed by the new releases that are out there on the market. Like, I'm not always looking for the newest, nicest thing. That's the thing. The mental shift is different. Yes, there have some things that have enticed me. However, once I've done the mental shift of being content with my stuff, that gets rid of 80% of the desire and the looking. And then I come to lean on my other skills and the other thing that I've learned to deal with that 20%. And so that really makes a big difference. Instead of using your skills of talking yourself out of stuff or logicking yourself out of wanting stuff for 100% of the time or 80% of the time, I'm now only having to use those skills like 20% of the time, which makes them even more effective. Number 2 is having an outlet for some discretionary spending. I felt like crap in the past 2 years because I just wanted stuff, period. And I felt like that was a reflection on me, and that maybe my habits or my mindset wasn't like they weren't really changing. Over the year of contentment, I have definitely found myself wanting things less, but not completely. Like that desire just isn't gone. And I think that this buying into owning as little as possible, or framing your life as in how can I buy less stuff. All of that is about glorifying and venerating the less. And so it kind of feels like if I'm all about the least amount of things possible, mentally I understand why that applied to just thinking about stuff in general. Now, I tried overall budgeting in 2021. That was with some mixed success. So this year I tried low buy bingo, and low buy bingo is gone for now. She's gone, and there are plans to have her return next year. And there's a lot of things I really like about low buy bingo, and one of them is that outlet for discretionary spending. I've heard a lot of you talk about for fun money, and so many of you have really fun names for your for fun money categories. For those of you who have this kind of budgeting category, let me know what you call yours down below. This is the money that you can use to buy dumb shit with. It applies to any and all categories, stuff that you would qualify as wants. And some of that for me has been makeup, but it's also been things like a ring set or tarot cards, things like that. Even books have been in there. And actually, all of the makeup that I qualified as for fun, I mean, I bought all my NYX stuff with it, I bought my MAC stuff with it. One of the great things about the discretionary spending is that I don't feel like shit for wanting stuff. I've now created this kind of budget category. You can spend it however you want. And because there's that mindset shift of you want to buy stuff, here's a amount of money that you can use to buy stuff. And the thing about this kind of fund, I found my sweet spot with like what is an appropriate amount of money for me at this point in my life for this category. And for me, it's around $50. $50 allows me to buy something, have some choice, but still be financially responsible. If something ended up actually being dumb and a bad purchase, it wouldn't be a huge loss financially, is what I'm trying to say. It really helped me stop justifying every little thing that I brought in and feeling like shit for wanting stuff in general or for something not working out. And so that mindset shift of you're allowed to buy stuff, here's some money, have fun. I stopped feeling so guilty all the time. And what I really noticed about this as well is that I wasn't just seeing something, wanting it, and buying it. It became this process and this little ritual and this kind of dance of what am I going to get? How am I going to spend my money? And I would wait until the end of the month. I would wait and I would calculate and how can I maximize this? Or like, what do I really want to spend my money on? It really helped me prioritize how I want to spend my money. And I actually thought that there would be more of that impulse spending. I was just as considered with this spending as I was with other kinds of spending, which I didn't quite foresee, but it was also so much fun to wish list this stuff and to be like, oh, how can I spend my money? Like, what's going to be good? Just a lot of fun. What I really noticed was that when I was on a no buy, I did my absolute best to justify everything that I bought, to try and make it fit the no buy. I was doing mental gymnastics to somehow justify a blush, buying that in my no buy. Well, if you already have at least one blush, then you shouldn't be buying more in your no buy. Like, there's no real situation in which buying a blush would fit your no buy. I can think of maybe one or two, like you lose all of your makeup, or you forgot your makeup bag at home when you went on a trip or something like that. None of that happened. So I shouldn't have bought anything. And so I was doing these mental gymnastics to try and justify stuff. When you have a category of dumb shit money, dumb stuff money, whatever you want kind of money, I was way easier on myself and I was way more honest that this stuff was just for fun and I could admit it to myself because I had an outlet for that. And I didn't feel guilty about wanting that stuff at all and then eventually buying it. What was funny about the discretionary money is that a good chunk of it wasn't actually makeup. Makeup represented very little of what I wanted and then actually bought. So I think this is a tactic that I'm going to bring in next year. I think that maybe like $125 or even $100 every month is a little much for this category. So I think that there might be some changes to low buy bingo to make it somewhere between, let's say, $50 and $75 at most. But, that's a problem for next year. And I was saying my sweet spot is $50, but yours could be $25 or $200 depending on your income. And I think that's a great tactic. And the low buy bingo also allowed me to buy things like books that I had put on my list of wanting to give myself permission to buy, but always feeling guilty about buying them. So I think that there's a lot of goodness there. And, picking a number that won't break the bank. Number 3 is channeling my time and energy into other things. I spoke at the top of the video about an obsession with stuff. And I do believe that because of my channel, that I think about stuff and shopping more than the average person, simply because I make videos about them. So even if I was doing this on my own for fun, I'm still then, having a second time around making the video. Having other interests outside of YouTube and shopping was something I did not attempt to cultivate over the last 2 years. And it was only within the last year I really attempted to find hobbies and spending time on other things besides makeup and or makeup YouTube. When I had no hobbies, the main thing I did for fun was shop, or I would scroll, or I would be on makeup YouTube, which makes me want to buy stuff, or be on makeup Instagram, which makes me want to buy more makeup. By having other things that I'm interested in, I want to jump into a book right after finishing work. Or if I'm watching BookTube, they make me, I'm still influenced, but I'm influenced to read. I'm not influenced to buy books for the most part. I also watched art channels almost exclusively for a handful of months. They made me want to make art, not buy art supplies. And so I was still being influenced, but in a much more positive way. And it's way easier to stop shopping when you're not thinking about shopping. What I've also noticed is that I've begun to develop much more positive coping mechanisms for dealing with hard times. This one is still very much a work in progress and, really needs the most work. What I started noticing this year is that when I was dealing with hard emotions, I would escape into a book instead of going to Sephora, mindlessly scrolling, or going on makeup YouTube and watching reviews, or just being on makeup YouTube or Instagram. Or I would whip out my art journal, or sometimes my real journal. When I'm having a profoundly hard day, my first instinct is not to deal with the emotion, because I'm often not ready to deal with it right at that moment. What I'm usually looking for is a distraction. And then when I'm ready, go and process. So I became very aware of that habit this year. So I've been able to come up with alternatives, or really lean into that. That's what I'm going to do. Let's make it the best version of that I can do. And that would be reading, not spending money, or, doing activities that would make me want to spend money or behave in unhealthy ways. When I think about my worst spending last year, it was a lot all at the end of the year, but in a response to something. Well, we're not necessarily at that time of year yet, and I don't necessarily know how I'll react. I would say that so far I've gone through equally shitty, if not shittier things this year, and my behavior is already better. The last thing is trusting myself to make good choices. Over the last 2 years, I began building trust in myself again, and I would say this is happening more so in the last year and a half. I've been able to trust myself to handle my emotions, and trust myself to know that I can make good decisions, make good shopping choices. And if I make a mistake, it's a singular thing and not a let me beat myself up about it for days, weeks, or months. A lack of trust in myself really did me a lot of harm, and proving to myself that I was trustworthy has taken a lot of time. The best way I've learned how to do that is with my not now mindset, which is when I've wanted something, instead of saying no, just saying not now and picking a time later to reevaluate. And this has actually meant not just saying not now, but later, but actually picking a time and then actually doing the reevaluating. And when that time would be would depend on how urgent that desire felt. Like if I literally had a credit card in hand and was ready to check out, sometimes I would just wait 24 hours or 48 hours, like whatever the maximum amount that I could do and like handle. Within the last almost year, I don't think I've had very many days where I could only wait one day. I don't know that I've had any, but I can't necessarily remember every situation. I'm usually able to wait a handful of days, if not a week or sometimes 2 weeks. And I follow through on this practice most of the time. So by that, I mean that saying not now, later, and then being able to actually wait until the later, I'm able to do that 95% of the time, maybe even more. Now, being able to wait until the later and then say no, that happens roughly 80% of the time, probably more. And I've developed a really great track record. The reason why this is so important to me is because if I had no trust in myself that I couldn't make good choices, I either wouldn't try or I'd put in really harsh or restrictive rules that I wouldn't be able to follow. One of the reasons I went on a no buy is because I didn't trust myself to be able to just say no on my own. By actively working on making good choices and following through with them, created this positive reinforcement and this kind of really positive feedback loop that encouraged me to keep going and to make good choices. This video has really helped me think about what I've done well, which feels really great. And I'm somebody who can always use a little extra boost of gratitude and self-appreciation. I don't think I do that enough. So here's a moment of that. And now I get to think about where I want to go next year with the year of contentment, with no buys and low buys, because I have really noticed a change with my makeup spending, as well as my overall contentment with life and my overall shopping habits. And I want to be able to do even better, to go even farther. And I really feel like this year has done a lot of good for me in making me more content and feel happier and really appreciating my life. And it's also shown me where I can use the most work, which is fabulous. That's everything from me today, and I really hope you enjoyed this video. I had a lot of fun. I would love to hear what you've done really well this year. If you're on a no buy or a low buy, or you're just a conscious consumer, you're just somebody who's trying to do your best out here. I want to know what you've done really well this year. I would love to hear all of your self-gratitude in the comments below. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you again around here soon. Bye.